your introduction.
Okay. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our third R3 of the semester on effective feedback for digital student writing. We are excited for you to join us today. And as we have shared in our previous events, I wanted to let you know that we recently adopted a land acknowledgement, a statement that is a formal recognition, a formal statement that recognizes for us and respects the roles of Indigenous peoples and the traditional stewards of our land. And through our land acknowledgement, we honor the relationship between Indigenous peoples, their traditional territories, and our current residents on the land. So just as a note, this land acknowledgement will also be on our website, our department website. But before we get started, if you will allow me to read it, I think that it is a great statement of our one reverence for the indigenous peoples of the land, as well as our aspirations of where we'd like to see ourselves grow to as a department. So we within the Department of Educational Leadership and Policy Studies at Florida State University acknowledge that our university is located on the indigenous lands of the Appalachian Nation, the Muskogee Creek Nation, the Miccosukee Tribe of Florida, and the Seminole Tribe of Florida. We highlight and pay respect to this history because we understand how the state of Florida and Florida State University came to be settled on these lands. We recognize this land as scarred with a painful past of enslavement and settler colonial violence, the desolation of culture, and the forced removal of indigenous bodies. Despite this, we respect the cultural and ceremonial practices these indigenous nations maintain in and around Tallahassee today. As educators, we honor the knowledge of these tribes and their people and acknowledge that Indigenous students, faculty, and administrators are to Florida State University. We embrace the decolonization of our educational system and commit to disrupting suppressive systems through the explorations of many truths and lived experiences and creating room for those who are often excluded by harmful erasures in our practice and pedagogy. So thank you for giving me that moment to acknowledge our history. So our session today is focused on providing and receiving feedback because we know that writing is a major component of developing a scholarly identity. Writing feedback can be one of those hidden curriculum items, especially for folks who are new, unfamiliar with academia. So our goal in today's session is to equip faculty with the tools for communicating more effective feedback to all students with the express purpose of providing students with concrete and constructive ways to improve their writing. We also, part of our session today, will also provide guidance for students in how to interpret, to ask clarifying questions about that feedback so that you, again, can receive the feedback that you need in order to help you grow and to develop as a scholar. This session is co-sponsored by the Text and Academic Authors Association. And for those of you students who are ELPS students and you registered through the link that was provided, we'll make sure that you now have a free membership to TAA. TAA provides lots of resources related to writing, support, building community around academic writing. There are lots of presentations on demand, webinars, some templates and free ebooks, as well as a newsletter and a conference that TAA puts on. And because of our connection and our now relationship with TAA and Dr. Stevens, we are so excited to have her here today. Let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Stevens. Dr. Dannelle D. Stevens has co-authored 4 books and numerous articles framed around different ways to assist faculty in their complex roles as writers, scholars, and teachers. She has crystallized her many years of experience into assisting graduate students, faculty, and other professionals in creating a productive and satisfying professional life. She views coaching, consulting, and writing from a holistic perspective, valuing the person, the process, as well as the product. In her role as Portland State University faculty in residence for academic writing in the Office of Academic Innovation, she has created the Jumpstart faculty program involving over 300 faculty members in learning the strategies and skills of publishing academic writing. She consults both nationally and internationally on strategies that improve faculty writing and publishing and promote classroom assessment practices, as well as infuse their work with creative insights. Her fourth and most recent book, Write More, Publish More, Stress Less, isn't that a great title? Was published in January of 2019. And we are, again, so excited to have Dr. Stevens with us today and look forward to the insight that she will share. I will say that for my first year as a faculty member, Dannelle was responsible for helping me to address many things, but particularly some blocks around writing that I had that I didn't even know that I was struggling with. And so I'm grateful for her and look forward to all the ways that she can share with us today. Dannelle?
Thank you. Thank you, Tamara. Oh, it's so wonderful to see all of you on this afternoon in Florida. We're out here in the morning in Portland. And I wanted to acknowledge your university's acknowledgement of the Native peoples in the land on which you reside. I have that on the bottom of my signature as well, because it's important to acknowledge how the richness that we have inherited from the Native peoples, and and recognize that we have robbed them in many ways of their culture and history. And so our job is, as educators are the ones that are going to enlighten and change the society, and have changed. I really think that a lot of the awareness that we have now is because of you folks, teachers and leaders in schools. And I'm going to say the other reason that I got into the area of academic writing was that I wanted you to have a pathway to share your perspective. When I was in graduate school, I had absolutely no idea what my professors were telling me to do in terms of feedback. I was so confused. I didn't know academic language. I in fact, I put a fifth person on my committee and I said, your job, Bruce, is to translate what they're telling me to do, because I have no idea what they're telling me to do. And I was a public school teacher for 14 years, and then I got into grad school, and I was smart, like you guys are smart, but being smart about writing is a whole different thing. So part of my job, I feel, is to pass on to the next generation, and for you to pass on to your next generation the tools and the strategies and the perspectives and the orientation and the disposition to write. Because writing is your insurance policy in academia. Writing is where you and your values and who you are can come out and make a difference. So I feel pretty strongly about that. So that's why I've done this work, because I want you to be empowered to speak up and share and make a difference. So let's go forward. And one of the issues, of course, is this issue of feedback. And how do you, because feedback has some certain assumptions that it's supposed to help you learn and be a better writer. So let's refine our skills a little bit and add some more tools to our toolbox so that both faculty and students can get better at this. I will say I have one random element in this. I have a little house here, a little she shed, and that's my cat. So Cricket may walk across the screen. Right now she's asleep over there. So I just warn you if you see a tail go across. That's my cat, okay? We're human here. I wanted to introduce her. She just sort of woke up and I thought, oh my goodness, she always likes Zoom meetings because I don't know, she ends up waking up for Zoom meetings. Okay, so I'm gonna share my screen and go through a PowerPoint with you. And I want to also thank a number of you for participating in the survey. And we'll have a drawing at the end for 3 people will get a book for having participated in the survey. So it's a little bit of an incentive there. Okay, so let's do the screen share. Okay. Do you see it? Okay, sort of. Let's make it a little smaller if we can.
We can see it.
Is that good? Good. Okay, great.
Yes.
So relevant research roundtables, thanks to your university and textbook and academic authors, I am able to do this presentation. We will have the slides are in the chat, and there's some resources in here that are I will also share later. So it is sponsored by your department and Textbook and Academic Authors Association. They are a wonderful organization, and they work on the assumption that we all can learn more about writing. I think when you get into graduate school or when you go through, faculty assume it's an interesting job because there's things that are expected to do that you haven't been taught to do, like write or teach or write letters of recommendation or write narratives for promotion or write all sorts of things you're expected to do and you haven't really been trained. So this organization really supports you as an academic writer and a textbook writer. So you will receive materials from them and announcements, they have webinars, and they are very helpful in helping you as a writer. And it's assumption that we can always learn more about writing. And I'm not from the English department, I'm really from the educational psychology department, because I take a strategic approach to the process of learning to write. So the agenda is we're going to define what is feedback. We'll talk about some of the challenges that you face and faculty face and doctoral students face, give you some ideas on effective feedback, and then talk about the benefits of academic writing. So we're going to talk about formative, not evaluative feedback. And I bet as educators, you all know the difference of that. Formative is a developmental process, feedback to develop the learner, not to summarily make a decision about whether the person gets an A or a B or passes their dissertation. So feedback is information communicated to the learner that is intended to modify or change your thinking and behavior to improve learning. So ultimately, the goal of feedback is to improve what you're currently doing. What we do know from the research is whatever faculty feedback you are given, it plays a role in your commitment to writing as a student. And you may think back into your years in those faculty, your years as a student, or students themselves to think back to your years as a student, and also the feedback you probably give students if you're teaching classes. It does affect students and what they do in the future. So we do have, it not only affects their writing, but affects some feeling. Are they committed to writing? Do they feel this is something doable? Something they understand how to do. So we'll go forward and share some ideas about that. So in the survey, these are some of the responses that you faculty, a few of you faculty, no names mentioned here, responded when I asked them about writing. For faculty, one goal was to help them improve their writing, to learn academies, learn the academic language, a very worthy goal because it's not just improving your writing, but in knowing the genre of academic writing. And another faculty member said on methods that work, this faculty does line editing, and so that they see her revisions and at times offers explanation for the not so obvious ones. This faculty member shares resources and is clear about expectations and grading criteria. So this issue of clarity is extremely important, and we find that in feedback, and we'll hear from the research also talks about that. For the challenges, one faculty member said, the challenge I have is effectively communicating what I mean when I saw watch the overall narrative. It's more complicated than that, but I struggle with words. So this faculty said she has a hard time when she hears, I guess, the overall narrative, and then she figures that she has a hard time finding the words to help the student overall with this assignment. So also it takes a lot of time and to provide good substantive feedback on all student work, and the other issue for faculty is providing critical feedback without being discouraging. So trying to, oh my gosh, what am I going to do with this student? And how can I help this student's writing? And still finding ways to give something positive. So this faculty member is aware of the need to actually do both. Students not understanding the feedback or not taking the feedback and making changes. Students rushing through their work and not paying attention to the final polishing that needs to happen. So I have a trick for that later that I'll show you. But it is often a problem that students, you spend all the time giving feedback and then students don't do anything about it. And that's pretty discouraging for faculty. And this person, one of them, wants to know on tips on how to do more effectively and efficiently. And hopefully some of that will happen today. So in terms of the research, the challenge is, and there is research on faculty and giving feedback to students. And one of the issues is that when faculty give feedback, they struggle, which is what was just said, they struggle with feedback. And some of it is they lack confidence and skill on how to give feedback, which is why you're here. And also because of difficulties articulating what has become tacit knowledge. And for faculty, they may know they know it's right. They know an argument when they see it, but they wonder how to actually create that argument and to teach students how to do that because it's tacit. It's something they've internalized. Many supervisors, just like I said, we're not taught to teach, not taught to write, and we're also not taught how to give feedback on writing. So they use the same pedagogies, faculties, that from those that they supervise them. And they also, it's disturbing when students to whom they have provided feedback, they turn it back in and have the same shortcomings as before. And faculty may give feedback to synthesize the literature and most summarize, and they don't know how to synthesize. So some of the key moves in academic writing, students aren't able to manage or do. So how do we overcome that? Well, let's look at the student viewpoint next. Well, let's go to the next one. Okay, this is what the students said. You folks said, you wanted to learn direction for areas of improvement, not just statements, this is confusing. How can I make it less confusing? This student asks. This student wanted clarity and engagement in the feedback they get. What's worked well for these students is I always do best when I'm given concrete examples of how to do better. So I have some ideas on that. And when I'm given an actual resource to use, that backup for the feedback. So they hope that the faculty member can share resources on how to manage that kind of feedback, make a better argument. So where's the place that I can read about making a better argument? And also this, what's worked well is examples of how it should look. Well, we'll have some ideas on that today. Tamara's going to share one of the ways that she does that. And when suggestions are given, when I have been praised for the good and clear sections. So making sure in the area of feedback that the faculty member actually has some clear sections. And this student said, when I have a challenge, I have a hard time not taking feedback personally. We all do. And think that you are criticizing me and not trying to help me grow as a writer. And other times the student said, I get feedback too late. So it's not given till the end of the semester and I don't have time to incorporate it. The next one, I don't necessarily have 3 or 4 challenges that I can think of, but one example would be feedback that isn't specific. If I'm doing something wrong, don't just tell me it's wrong, tell me why it's wrong and how to fix it, which takes more time, but there are some resources for that. And this student also said, I would definitely benefit more if positive and negative constructive feedback were incorporated more. So let's go to the next one. Oh no, wait. I didn't have these. So the literature actually backs up exactly what the student said. In this one research, students admitted they had lacked a clear understanding of how to write a literature review. They have not been taught what they were asked to produce. And given that the writing is a high stakes activity, so there's a lot of anxiety associated. Terminology used by tutors and in guidelines named academic writing conventions raise more questions than answers. This is from the research. Particularly for novice writers, this process is mysterious, and because it's mysterious, it ends up forwarding crippling self-doubt. So that's the issue and the challenge for us as receivers of feedback and also as givers of feedback. So let's go to, so the first thing I'm going to say, particularly in giving written feedback for faculty, is in terms of effective feedback, I view it more as a conversation. So when you're starting to work in a class with students on writing, emphasize that writing is thinking, and there's a reason to write clearly. It's because clear writing is clear thinking. So everyone wants to write clearly. I know that I used to have a cartoon that said, writing is nature's way of telling you how sloppy your thinking is. Because you sit there and you go, oh yeah, I got it. Or you're lying in bed in the morning. I do this all the time. Oh, I got it. I'm going to go down. I'm going to put that in my paper. I know it sort of slips away, like slides down the glass. It's gone, the idea, and it's not clear. So writing actually forces me to think more clearly. And so there's a reason for that. So faculty, I suggest that faculty share that with students, that in the intro to the term. And in addition, I suggest that faculty focus on writing as communicating feedback as a conversation. So, and I'll give you some sentence stems for that. It's a written conversation, and it's an opportunity to communicate, not just evaluate, but communicate with the student. And so that opportunity it's a way, well, I'm not sure when you say this, as a listener, think of yourself as a listener. My mind goes over here, not there. And so you help the student understand exactly what they're doing, and but view it as a conversation. And I'll have some stems in the next slide. And discuss and clarify expectations early on. And in addition, for faculty, in terms of the conversation, just like if you had a conversation face-to-face with someone or Zoom to Zoom, I suppose, consider carefully and respectively what the students bring to their writing. And one piece of research said, we continue taking a multi-dimensional view of feedback. where the situational and individual characteristics of the instructional context and learner are considered, along with the nature and quality of feedback. Tamara, do you want to comment on that for a minute, just a little bit? Because I know that you had some ideas about that.
Sure. I think one of the many reasons why we view this discussion that we're having as part of our kind of extending understanding of equity and responsive to students is that oftentimes we have very faculty and sometimes even students have very narrow views of what is considered good writing, ways of communicating that are grounded in our, as Dannelle mentioned earlier, in our own trainings, and not paying attention to or being responsive to individual students and what focusing on the message instead of, or focusing on the way that the student has communicated instead of the message that they are attempting to communicate. So as we take a more holistic understanding or multi-dimensional view of feedback, paying attention to in our minds who this student is and what their goals are, what their appreciations of their standpoint or their positionality also helps us to provide more personalized feedback for that student. That's not just put this period here, expand this argument, but allows us to expand on that. Sorry.
Thank you, Tamara. I had a doctoral student who, picking of an example of this, who wanted to do her research in Africa, in Kenya, at the refugee camps. And because she'd done these peace seminars in several other nations around the world. And so, okay, sounds interesting. So she just went forward and did this and gathered data from some people at the camp, ran these workshops. When she wrote her dissertation, every chapter, because she's so into narrative and so into story, every chapter began with a story. Now, that's not on our rubric, but as a reader, I was like, well, I wonder what the committee's going to think. Because I felt really connected with her and connected with what she was doing and the story she needed to tell. The rest of the chapter looked like a regular dissertation, but she needed to introduce it and put each chapter in a context. And the good news is she actually won a dissertation award for that work. So taking a risk as a faculty member and maybe warning your committee members, this is a little different. We'll take some feedback on it, but she's such a good writer and her stories were so interesting that she did very, very well. So that's one of my examples from my own students. Okay. So view it as a conversation. So, all right, let's go back over here. So in your comments, excuse me, in your comments, you can use a more dialogic voice. So instead of, tell me more, tell me about this, but, use a very kind of an invitational, gee, tell me a little more about this topic, meaning you need to add some more information in this part. And the tell me is a very interesting, it's very good in interviewing, and it's also in writing because it's an imperative in a way. It's a very polite imperative. Tell me about, and I'll just tell you a very small story with that. I had a student, I taught her the difference between tell me about something and using interviews and what was your experience? And she used it with her husband. And so one day, instead of saying, how was your work today? She said, tell me about your work today. And she said, Professor Stevens, I couldn't stop him talking. he just kept going on and on. So it's a pretty powerful thing to say, tell me about something, because it's a very polite invitation, but it still has a little bit of a demand under it. And position yourself not as an evaluator, but as a reader. As a reader, I was expecting to find a purpose statement in the beginning of the first chapter. So a very clear purpose statement. So let's work on that. And I'm confused at what you're saying here about, and say where you're confused, and maybe ask, how have you thought of? Another one is, help me understand, how do you think this works in your paper? And so it's a much more of like face-to-face conversations. And the other thing is to always avoid why questions, because anytime, you ask why, people get very defensive. So you want to be careful with that. The other one is to provide models. One of the students, actually one of your folks, mentioned that, and I think you mentioned that when you said you want something. I don't know what you're talking about. Give me some models. 2 ways to do that. One is provide a model. The other is use a rubric, and we'll talk more about that. But Tamara has found a really good way of developing a model and for this work. So.
Muted. Sorry, I'm still muted. This is actually modeled after one of the structures that Dannelle provided me in one of our coaching sessions using journal articles. So there's a dissertation structure analysis, and I don't think that I can share it here. I'll put it in the chat, but it is a guide or a tool that you can use to deconstruct dissertation sections. Oftentimes, the first time students are reading the dissertation is when they start to write their own dissertations. And that's a little, not too late, but it's a little late then. So the dissertation structure analysis is a way for students to break down the different components, the different chapters, and the different sections within each of the dissertation to understand, to get at the underlying structure. And what I've learned from Dannelle and others is, if I can understand the structure, then I can use that structure and add my own flavor, and modify that structure to fit my particular project. In the dissertation structure analysis example, we break down each of the dissertation chapters in the dissertation. So chapter 1, and you're looking at the broad, what are the sections that are included in this dissertation chapter, along with how many words are included in titles or in the sections of that particular chapter. Do they use quotes, or are they just using plain section headers? So it allows you to break down and look at the dissertation, not from the content, but from the structural level, to help you to identify some components of structures that you want to make sure that are included in your dissertation. There are some commonalities in dissertations, and you'll get some guidance from your advisors about what those sections are. But you do have a little bit of flexibility in terms of modifying that structure, again, so that it fits your particular project. And I'm dropping the file in the chat so you can see what it looks like.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That was a great development based on the text structure analysis that I have in my book and have used for years. Mostly, it's like, if you're going to drive to San Francisco, or if you're going to drive to Orlando, you might, well, probably Orlando, you don't need a map, but but if you were driving to San Francisco, you wouldn't just take off. You kind of know which highways and you know which byways to be efficient. And what a text structure analysis does is it shows you, it helps you envision, helps the student envision what this product, and you compare, I think you have two or three dissertations that the students compare, and then they can see the pattern across those. Is that right, two?
Yes.
Two, okay. Also, you begin to help students become acquainted with the language, with the academic language related to dissertations, which is a foreign language to most of them. It certainly was to me when I was in grad school. I mean, I did a master's thesis and there were some echoes from that, but many people in education don't do master's theses. They do theses, they do projects, assessment projects in their district, particularly if they have a teaching license. So they haven't done a thesis. So for many of them, this is a whole new ballgame. And so having a vision of what it actually looks like to write this beast, this first book, essentially, is really helpful. You may decide that it's a lot, too much. Do your students do that, Tamara? Do they go, oh my gosh, this is a lot? Or yeah.
It can be intimidating once they think about taking the whole dissertation and trying to look at the structure. And that's why we break it down chapter by chapter so that it's more manageable. They
understand the value of that, of breaking it down. Yeah, great. And then the other thing I want to share with you, which I think is very powerful thing is, I'm going to stop the share. And I'm going to do a new share. Let's hope I'm smooth at this. Okay. It's over on the other. Okay. Oh, share. Okay. So you can see this share. This is something I would bookmark. What I did is I printed the whole thing, actually, because this is an incredibly valuable, this man, John Morley, is a linguist, and he has taken the critical, you may look at this, introducing, referring, describing, reporting, just findings, conclusion. That looks kind of familiar to the structure of most theses and dissertations. And what he has done, and I'll open this one, is he's taken each section, he says what's supposed to happen in the introduction, and then under each one of these, he's given you the language. They're like lubricants for your language, the typical language when you're establishing the importance of your topic. You may or may not use it. Sometimes I may use this, like I was writing conclusion a couple of years ago, and I thought, I'm going to go and use the phrase bank. And it kind of gets you moving as to what are the key rhetorical moves in that section. And ultimately, after revision and revision, usually these sentences go away, but they provide you with some sort of a structure that you can use as a writer, and faculty can give to students if they're struggling with a certain section. It also has, and I strongly, somebody talked about resources, you also can see these along the side. There's a PDF available, defining terms, giving examples, signaling transition. All of those are rhetorical moves in academic writing. So I'm going to stop that, but you should put that as one of your resources for.
I put the link in the chat for.
Yeah. Could you do that, Tamara, for me? Thank you. So let's go back to the PowerPoint. So I would do that. Some of this work comes from Graf and Berkenstein's. You've probably heard it. They say, I say, the moves that matter in academic writing. And I was just delighted when I found these resources because it gave me something to do when I felt stuck. It gave me some frameworks. Again, both of these idea of models and frameworks, it's like you have a picture of the house. You don't necessarily know what's inside of it, but at least you know it's a house and what it looks like. So, so the third topic is give an effective feedback is to work on technical editorial feedback, decide what kind of feedback as a faculty member is important for you to give. And do you want to give feedback at that level? Given the fact that you have a lot to give feedback on, so you don't want to overwhelm the students. I actually found a pretty cool thing, and we'll put this in, is a quiz for APA. The library, not Portland State, but Penn State Library has an APA quiz for students with APA 7. So you can have students go do that and report their score to you. And so that's just a way to kind of heighten students' awareness of the choices they make and how important that technical information and not be distracted by it as a faculty member. And I find some of the APA errors are distracting to me as a reader. And if I see too much, it's hard for me to keep reading if I see this. So helping students get good at APA is an important thing without haranguing them. If you put it on the rubric, it's also a way to heighten students' awareness of the need to pay attention to those kind of details. The other thing is to make short videos. I put I'm not going to go to it now. When I had students, these were master's students, but I had master's students who didn't know how to do a hanging indent, and it was driving me nuts. So I have a company called Screencast-O-Matic. I subscribe to them, and I made a little video and put it on YouTube. And so on how to do a hanging indent, which meant I took one of their papers and I went through and talked my way to how I would correct this paper with the hanging indent. So I have a series of little videos on my YouTube, which is Dannelle Stevens without the D, and not Danielle. They'll ask you if it's Danielle. It's Dannelle Stevens. And you could watch those if you want as a model, but I find that sometimes when this stuff is just, it's one little thing that keeps occurring and you want to have students correct it, easiest way to do that I found is through a short video, which seems to take care of it very quickly. They see student work, they see how to improve it, and it goes very quickly. I also, because I take a holistic view of feedback, there's feedback line by line, but I also, because it's holistic and writing is a holistic process, I encourage you to help your students approach writing from a strategic point of view in feedback. That means suggest to them that they have a little library of books on academic writing, and I can share that list with you. I suggest that there are templates, they're in my book, and also TAA has them, for key rhetorical moves in academic writing, like making the argument or designing a purpose statement. So that's where you can refer students to these, or in class, if something is, like there's a great activity to do in class with a purpose statement, which I did all the time when I was teaching doctoral students, to help them clarify their thinking, and that purpose statement becomes the centerpiece for their writing. So helping them understand these key rhetorical moves. There's also my argument template people really like, because it really simplifies this complex issue of argument, but it clarifies what are the key rhetorical moves in an argument, and it makes it doable for students, and they understand it for the first time. Also, because academic writing takes place in a context, suggest to them that they need to find some time management strategies. There was a workshop I did with TEA last week on time management strategies, and suggest that because they're going to have to manage their time in order to be able to do this writing, There's online resources like Trello, and there's another one, Kanban, which was mentioned. So encouraging students, and even so that they don't end up this is not, a dissertation is not something you can do on Friday before it's due at all. Yeah, it's not. You have to continually work on it. So for students to understand that it's that kind of a process, they need some strategies, some time management strategies to adjust their family and themselves. And the last thing is to use rubrics. And because rubrics, we have a rubric for our dissertation proposal, and our core paper at Portland State. I was the chair or the director of the doctoral program for 3 years. And I also wrote a book on rubrics. So the fact that the committee said, Dannelle, will you create us a rubric for, for the dissertation? Because they didn't have one. And they had one for the core paper. So I said, okay, with another couple of faculty members, we sat down and we created a rubric for the proposal and for the dissertation. And that was in 2014. And I'm retired. I've been retired since 2016. And it's still there. And it was a pilot at the time. You know how things are. They're pilot, and it's still there. It hasn't been modified. The students find it extremely helpful, and the faculty find that, in fact, the people that come from other departments that are on our committees, they go, you know, the dissertations in the School of Ed used to be all over the place. And just in the last couple of years, they've been so much more sensible and organized. And so I actually put that to the power of having a good rubric, which lays out expectations and lays out language, academic language. You can go through it and look at keywords, like we have something like the boundaries, defines the boundaries of the project. Students go, what do you mean by that? And so it helps you discuss with students that academic language if you have a rubric. And I think I will be doing a workshop with faculty this fall to promote and help them begin to design a rubric that's suitable for your institution. You don't need the Portland State rubric. You need to create your own in your own language. And so I hope I get the opportunity to help faculty do that, because it'll help everybody have a common language to converse about. And so the characteristics in summary, you can view the process as a conversation, so you use that language. Take the mystery out of feedback by giving students models, so that when you're talking about a section, they know what to do with it. Attend to the technical and editorial, and use rubrics. Other people have said, and I agree with that, is you have to limit the feedback to focus on how to improve rather than what is wrong. And the students have said that too. So, and to offer resources to the students so that they have something they can do with the materials that you give them. So here's another model of that. View it as a conversation, so that your language in the comments are a conversation. You can provide models. You can focus your attention only, not on everything, giving feedback, which is a choice, and encourage a strategic and a reflective approach. I have a colleague who somebody was saying students don't pay attention to comments. And one of the things that she does is on Microsoft Word is you can take two papers and put them side by side. And she says that when she gets a draft back, she puts her comments on one side, student revisions on the other side. And she checks to make sure that the students have included the revisions. And if they haven't, then she makes a comment that they need to pay more attention, or if they don't know what to do, they can write that in the comments of the in the paper side by side. So it's a side-by-side review of the paper. So that's one way to do that. I don't know if anybody has used that among this group, but that would be a good way to manage the feedback. So what the benefits of doing this kind of feedback on writing? For the students, you're going to introduce to students the academic language. As I said, for me, I didn't know much about academic language when I went into grad school. And there is a language. So using Manchester, also focusing the kind of comments you make is really important. You also hone their own thinking skills, because writing is thinking. So as students are improving their writing, you're also contributing to their critical thinking. You're also finding ways to address the complexity of academic writing. It's not just so much looking at the page, it's more than that. It's designing your life. It's the time management. It's being organized. It's not just the words on the page, but trying to learn how to take that feedback, the positive feedback, along with the critical feedback, and incorporate it. And for the students, they're going to get some models of effective feedback. In addition, they'll become better writers and thinkers at the same time. For faculty, by practicing good feedback, they will expand their knowledge of effective writing strategies. So they begin to, as they also become students of academic writing and use these materials, you actually become a better writer yourself as a faculty member. And you also are beginning to develop a flexible approach to communication on writing. So by paying attention to students' writing, you can support your own work of working across cultural and language differences. I had a doctoral student from Mexico, is the story, and she, her native language was Spanish. Not much English, really, but she had good verbal English. And I read her chapter 3, and I realized all the components were there, but they weren't in the right order. So I went through the chapter and I went through the rubric and I numbered the rubric 3A, 3B, it was chapter 3, 3C, 3A, B1, 3A, B2. And in the front of every paragraph, I put that number. And I didn't know actually Word worked this way. I highlighted the whole chapter and words and put sort, and the Word sorted it by those sections. And so I was able to very quickly not just say, this belongs at the beginning, this belongs at the end. I used the rubric and that sorted it. And then she could begin to see, and then I talked about each section from the rubric, and she could see she already had some stuff on it, that section. It just wasn't quite in the order that followed the rubric and that made more logical sense. So it helps using the tools you have as a faculty member. And lo and behold, at the end of all this, the most important thing you're doing as a faculty member is you're developing the next generation of scholars and helping them and their students become stronger writers is a worthy goal. So thank you for this opportunity. And there's my email if you want to contact me in any way. I do have a website with a few things on it. My books are on there, and where I have done workshops is on there. I also have a playlist on YouTube for Zotero, which is another workshop, actually a workshop I'm going to do for TAA this year, a citation management system. Essential for good scholars to have some citation management system. And thank you very much. So I'm going to stop my share and see if there's any questions or comments.
Okay. Erica, I think I see Erica's hand first. Erica? Or are you clapping?
But thank you so much.
Okay.
It's been fabulous.
Okay. Dannelle, did you have a question or was that clapping too? Okay.
It was just an hour, I know. I packed
Yeah,
a lot of stuff in.
you did fantastic for an hour. Question for Dr. Stevens. Faculty, students,
Comments?
Melanie? Sure, you can unmute.
Hi, thank you, Dr. Stevens. That was really helpful. And I have a question. Sometimes they say that, or, our faculty say, you should have your peers read your work before, and then you go to lab meetings or meetings with other peers, and, we often discuss each other's papers. And so we ended up having 5 different versions of feedback on top of what we're going to give to our faculty. And if in our committee meeting we have 5 people, so how can we best address, and how do we, because again, if you have a goal and you want to process the feedback and continue working, but then you get overwhelmed with 10 different people giving you feedback, so how can we streamline that? Or who do we think take more than whom? Do we go for senior peers or more junior peers, or people in our field, or not? So what would you think would be best?
Well, I tend to be one that I tend to not, in the early stages of your writing, I don't think peer feedback necessarily is helpful. Not that you guys don't, I mean, somebody's going to argue with me, but I think not that it's because of the whole thing of academic language and structure. So many of you, it's nice to hear from your peers, but expecting peers to be able to help you, it's probably heresy, but I tend to not stress too much on, I might be one section or a purpose statement or an argument, but not the whole paper or even the whole chapter. I think that's a lot to expect because there's a lot of stuff going on, and it's hard to keep track of it. And so that's kind of my response, is that it's not necessarily the most productive in the early stages. I think later on, or if you're looking for a very specific thing, and have the students look for that peer review, but just to read it, it's a waste of your time, and it's a waste of the peers' time as well. You may disagree, but that's the way I teach.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody? Juan, I think you had your hand up at one point.
No, I didn't. I was clapping. So.
Oh, okay. That's wrong. Wrong symbol.
I will say this. I have your book, and I am still getting through it because this semester has been a little tough, but I appreciate it. And I'm glad TBJ told me to read it because it's been helpful for, trying to get the writing in every day, which I had not been doing at the beginning of the program, and just in other things. And it was beneficial for me starting my writing group. So baby steps, but hopefully I'll be like you all one day. So thank you.
Baby steps they're steps. And look at that book with all the tabs on it. I'm impressed. Here's Cricket. Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Owan. Appreciate it. Appreciate it very much.
Actually, somebody had a question and I saw it, so I'll ask. What is the best way to go to a professor or faculty member to ask them for, I guess, better feedback or clarification on the feedback that they've given? Yeah, that's the best way I know how to ask that.
I'm not trusting the verbal so much as I am the written. So I might, because to clarify your questions, I think writing helps you. So I would probably put the comment in the notes on the side or in writing. So that's very specific and it's related to a specific part. Then the faculty member can anchor their feedback to the actual text itself. That would be my suggestion, is that it's more that you focus on the text itself at that point, the more likely you'll get feedback and the faculty understand what your question is. The faculty also understand that, I'm going to say this, another heretical thing to say is that their comment wasn't helpful. Okay. That they, that this didn't communicate very well to the student. So they also need feedback on the quality of their comments. You know, I like that. The student goes, I don't understand. So they'll go, wait a minute, next time I give that comment, I'm going to be more careful. So you're helping them be better feedbackers to you. Good question. Anyone else? I know we're over a little time here. So if people have to go, I understand. If people want to stay, I don't expect you. I always like to, I take all my time in my class. I never let anybody leave early ever. But you can leave early because we're over time. Okay. But it's been delightful to work with you. So.
Well, while we're waiting to see if any other questions come in, let's do the honors of the following.
Okay. Yeah. For the people, 3 books. Three books.
You get 3. You get the Write More, Publish More, Stress Less book.
Okay. I have Christine. Is she gone? Do you have to be present to her?
Christine Moker. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
I didn't put last names on here, so I'm just going to go by first names because everybody had a different first name. Cassandra. Cassandra.
Cassie Keppel. She was on earlier.
Okay. So do we say they have to be present to win or not? No, because it's over the time. So Cassandra is the other one. Okay, here we go. Kate. Kate Schnell.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And so those are the 3. That's great.
I will work with the 3 of you to get you your books then.
Okay, terrific.
If you are interested in purchasing Dr. Stevens' book, just see me before you do so, and we might have a discount code or something for you so that you can get her book and all of the books. But a couple of announcements before you go. On Friday, November 6th, Antonio Ruiz Esquerra will lead us on our First Friday mission to Mexico City. So if you haven't joined us for any of our First Friday social hours, they have been fantastic. We have visited lots of really cool places, and this has been more than I have imagined. So get your passport ready, pack your bag, and we're going to Mexico City on November 6th.
Wow, that sounds great.
It's fun. I'll send you the link and you can join us too.
Can I join you? I'd love to. You know, it gets a little boring in COVID. So.
And our next R3 is scheduled for November 18th. And we are also in for a treat with Dr. Kakali Bhattacharya. She is a professor of qualitative research methods at the University of Florida. And her session is going to be Human Inquiry is Not Free from Human Influence. Positionality Matters. Join us for our last R3 of the semester on November 18th. But thank you all so much for being with us this afternoon. We appreciate you.
Can I say one other thing?
Sure.
Students like this. Okay, you notice my name is Dannelle D. Stevens. So as you begin writing and publishing, consider putting your initial in your name, because APA, and there's a reason why it's not gender neutral. And I'll tell you that in a minute. But you know, I am in writing in references D.D. Stevens, not D. Stevens. So there's probably many D. Stevens, but there's not as many D.D. Stevens. So as you write, put your middle initial in your name, and because that's it'll you know, it goes with you now that you're beginning to write and you're beginning to publish. It goes with you forever, and you might as well make sure that you're distinctive in your writing. And the reason that APA is gender neutral is because in the 60s and with the women's movement, they used to have all the first name in APA. And what happened was that the women started going, oh, I don't know if that's a problem, but the guys started going, so Sarah, who could believe Sarah? You know, why would Sarah? Because there weren't that many women academics, you know, really, hardly any. And particularly in tenure line. So who's going to believe Sarah or Gwen or Holly or whoever? So the women said, okay, we'll take care of that. We'll get rid of the first names. That's why they're initials.
I have a question about that. So say one day I get married and choose to change my last name. Do my publications prior to that just stay as H. Daniels? Is there a process to go back and change that? It is what it is. Okay.
So you're going to make that decision now.
Right.
Unless
right.
you can predict who you're going to marry.
No, definitely not.
So Holly, I did,
Go
mine
ahead.
have changed, right? So my last name changed now. And someone said, oh, are you sure you want to do that for your academic career? And I'll be honest with you, I kind of decided if that's what ends my career, then so be it.
Right. Yeah.
Because I am going to be who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I'm Bertrand Jones, honestly. I'm, besides the.
Do you, Tamara, is your, the name in the back of the, is it Bertrand Jones?
It's
comma
Bertrand
T?
Jones. Yes.
Comma T. Okay.
And Google Scholar does it wrong all the time. And so when people are citing me, I've found that it'll translate to just, I'll be TB Jones. I'm like, no, that's not my name.
That's not why I did that.
Right. But I go by, or I prefer Bertrand Jones.
Yeah, you have to fight for it.
Yep, you do.
But yeah. Okay. Well, it's been great meeting you folks. Maybe I'll come to your tour of Mexico City because I've never
I
been.
would definitely send you the
I've
link.
been in a lot of places, but not Mexico City. So that would be fun to see you all then. And yeah, it's great. Well, November, what is that date? 6th?
November 6th, Friday, November 6th.
Hopefully we're breathing well and lightly. Hopefully. You know what I'm talking about.
Thanks for reiterating the stress.
Okay. Yeah.
If you
That's what I've been doing in my retirement. Half of my time is activism. So,
if you
and
need,
actually, my group